All right, everybody. So here's my plug for this review assignment. Um, I want you to take the time to go back through all the work that we've been doing the first couple weeks to make sure that you understand not only what the work was, but how it fit together. So regardless of the scores you've been earning so far, I'd like everybody to complete this. Even if you look at your grade and you're like, oh, I love my grade, I'm just going to go do the next stuff. Please don't do that. The way things are scored in this class is I'm going to teach you about a few skills, maybe 4 skills. We've covered 2 so far. Ethogram writing, observing behavior, and then asking a question about the causes of behavior. Those are 2 skills. And I expect students to do those skills multiple times using multiple different animals. Students sometimes do great at first, sometimes not. No matter which group you fit into, though, what I'm looking for is improvement. So let's say you didn't do very well the first time, right? I want to see that you're getting better at the skill. If you improve on a skill, you'll replace the old summative grade on that particular skill. So it's really important that as we're going along, you understand how ideas are connected together and what it looks like to give good answers. So to do that, I'm going to ask you to review all the work that we've done, even if you like your grade. Because in some cases, I gave you full credit on like formative work because you did the work, not necessarily because you did it correctly. So I'd like everybody to start back in Unit 1. And by the way, if you haven't done the first 2 units, you need to do that before you can even do this activity. Otherwise, you're not ready to evaluate it. But I'd like you to open up your Ethogram background reading activity. I'm going to pause while you do that and I get that open, and then I'll restart here. So you should pause now and find that document. Okay, so hopefully you paused and now you have this document open up. Okay, in this document, I asked you to consider what ethograms are and why they're written. Okay, and I gave you some specific instructions about what we do with them and then what to include in them. And these words, structural detail and relational detail, if you didn't read through those carefully the first time, you're going to want to do it now because those words are going to keep coming back in what I've been talking about. And then I gave you some examples. I gave you an example of an ethogram, a horse ethogram, and I said, oh, well, here's the categories, here's the structural descriptions, here's the relational descriptions. And then I asked you to try it yourself, okay? Now look at your answers for this activity. Some of you struggled with this, in part, I think, because you just kind of jumped down to this part and you just tried it, is my guess, but maybe it's also just because you don't understand what ethograms are or how they're written, okay? So we have these 3 the categories I asked you to find. Categories are 1 or 2 words, simple descriptions of behavior. You see that described up here. Those are right here. Almost everybody did that well. Next, though, it asked you to describe the structural details of attack individual. And there's a wide range of answers here, so please look at what you wrote about. If you look at attack individual, did you identify physical movements of the body? That's what a structural detail is. So running, lunging, things like that. If you wrote the whole sentence, running after or lunging at a solitary individual or single member, if you wrote all that, you wrote some structural detail, but you also wrote stuff that wasn't structural detail. And it's important that you know what the difference is. So when I give you feedback and I say, well, you need to add structural detail, that you understand, oh, he wants me to write more descriptions about the animal's body and what it's doing with its body. On the flip side, relational detail, that's the stuff where you tell me about where the animal is in its environment or what's around it. And in this case, relational detail might be the at, so the physical structural movement is done at a solitary individual, or it's done at a single member. Those are your relational details. So go back and look at that. A lot of you were confusing those 2 terms, or you just didn't understand what relational details were. And in some cases, you were writing kind of elaborate things about wolves that weren't even part of the ethogram. The structural and relational details will be in the ethogram. They're writing things that are written down in the ethogram. And then question 4, a surprising number of you struggled with this. And again, I think it's because you just looked at the picture and you said, well, which of these categories do I think it is? You didn't read the definitions. And when you use an ethogram, you have to read both parts. And you have to understand what's in both parts in order to make it work. So if you said that this was an attack attack group, you got it wrong, right? And a lot of you said, oh, it's an attack group because you were like, oh, that's a group of wolves. Nope, that's not what attack group is. Attack is running after a fleeing group or lunging at a standing group while glancing about at different group members, okay? So you're lunging at a fleeing group. I did accept things like approach, so fixing on and traveling towards prey, or attack individual, because in this case they're attacking a solitary individual. Okay, you got to know how to use ethograms. That was just a formative score. You did the work, you got the credit. Okay, I'm going to pause and move on to the next activity. Now I'd like you to go and open up your minnow ethogram, and I'm going to do the same. So pause and go find that. Should have this assignment open. Now for this one, I can't really give you answers. This was about how well you could write an ethogram. I was looking for you to fill in 3 other categories of behaviors. Now you watched those behaviors by watching these videos. And the trick here was you were trying to figure out how is what the minnows are doing in this little section of video different than what they're doing in this section? What can I describe about their body that separates them? And maybe about where they are in relationship to each other, okay? Go look at the feedback on this. Please read my comments. I took the time not only to score the rubric, but also to type out detailed instructions about how to write a better ethogram. Everyone needs to go and look at your score on this one. This was your first summative assessment on ethograms. If you struggled with this, you're going to struggle with future ethograms if you don't go and read my feedback. But if you use my feedback and get better at ethogram writing, this score will go away. Okay? I'm going to pause, and I'm going to now open up the individual animal research discussion post. All right, so here we are at the discussion post for an individual research project. So throughout this course, you're going to be applying what we learn about animal behaviors to a behavior you're interested in. And in this one, the task was to identify a behavior. Just identify it, just find it. Now, some of you went much farther. Some of you started even writing an ethogram, even though that wasn't what you needed to do here. What you needed to do, and it says this right here, but let me just verbally go through this because some of you didn't do this, is to find 2 videos. The same kind of animal, right? Same type of animal, but 2 different videos. Or the same video that shows 2 different animals doing a behavior. Not a bunch of behaviors, one behavior. So let's say you went and found a video on crocodiles. I don't want a bunch of behaviors of crocodiles. I want one specific behavior that crocodiles do, and then I want to see 2 different examples of them doing it in video form. That is all that you needed to submit here. If the video was like a 20-minute video about alligators, I asked you to find the segment of the video that I needed to watch to see the behavior you were going to be working on. Once you made that submission, it was that behavior that you're going to do the next assignment about. So I'm going to pause for a second here and open up the individual research project ethograms. It was your second ethogram score. So open that up so that we can look at it. Okay, now, assuming you have written this second ethogram in which you reviewed your first minnow ethogram and you wrote a second one, if you've done this, please look at the feedback that I gave you on it. Look at your scores. You're looking to see either that your score went up from your first attempt or at least stayed the same. Unfortunately, many of your scores went down. And I think what happened is I gave you a little bit more freedom. Some of your understanding, your ability to write ethograms also went down. So to do this, you should be going back to the work, the background notes on how to write ethograms. What is a structural detail? What is relational detail? What's a category? You got to pick the behavior. You did that in the discussion post earlier. And some of you wrote an ethogram, again, about minnows or something like that. I wanted this ethogram to be about your animal's behavior. And furthermore, I wanted it to only be one behavior. So you're only writing one category and then the structural and relational descriptions for those categories. Unlike the minnows where you had to do 3 different behaviors. Okay, and I gave you 1, so you had 4 total. In this case, you're writing just one behavior. Now for this, when I looked at them, a lot of you we're not writing enough structural or relational details. Okay. I did not want, and an ethogram is not supposed to be a description of 30 seconds or a minute of one animal's life. That's why I wanted you to find 2 videos, because what I want you to do is create a description of what does the behavior look like in general, right? So like I showed you the videos on the cheetahs. I showed you 2 different videos of a female cheetah teaching her young how to hunt. An ethogram would describe in general how female cheetahs teach their young, not how one of those videos went. So your writing shouldn't have talked about, well, first the animal did this, and then it did this, and then it did this. No, it should be about, oh, here's a behavior we can see in the video, and then describing that behavior so that somebody could look at it and understand it, you know, by seeing that same animal doing that behavior in a completely different situation, different time, different place, different animal. Okay, so in some ways your writing is general enough that it would apply anywhere, but it's also specific enough that you're including enough detail that somebody can fully visualize what it looks like. So many of you only focused on relational detail. That's probably because you were just describing the behavior. First the lion went here, and then it grabbed this thing, and then it went here. Structural detail has to be included so that I can visualize what it looks like. And when you write structural detail, let's say you're going to be talking about a cat pouncing. Don't just talk about its paws. Talk about its entire body. How's it holding its head? How's its back? How's it holding its back? What's it doing with its tail? Think about the entire body of the animal, because sometimes the parts that help you tell, oh, this is what the animal's doing, are not the most obvious parts. Okay? So go back and look at your score now, or look at your score now on your individual ethogram for your individual research project. If you did not score well on it, you might as well go and edit that document right now. Okay? You are going to need to have this ethogram as part of a summative project you're going to be turning in at the end of the trimester. And it needs to represent the best ethogram you can write about the behavior. So if you'd like to rewrite this and resubmit it for a score, I can tell you whether or not it's good, and I will replace your grade if it's better. Okay? Either way, you're going to have to write ethograms again on a different animal, so you might as well learn how to do it. I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to make a second video to talk about behavior causes. So once you've fully evaluated your ethograms and you're ready to move on, go ahead and do that.